Well, our speaker tonight is Daniel Gaines. I think pretty much everybody knows that we supported Daniel in Tanzania for 3 years. Man, time flies. He's been over there 3 years, but he's back in the States now and is going to be working for Lehman Avenue. And so we wanted to get him to give us a report on the 3 years that he spent there. And so I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Daniel. We're anxious to hear about it.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for partnering with us in our time and our mission in Tanzania. And thank you also for the opportunity to come back and report on some of the great things that happened during that time. So what I'd like to do, it is hard to believe that it's been about 4 years ago I came and talked to you initially. I don't know if any of you remember that or not, but told you about the things we wanted to do, told you about our plans, and now here I am telling you what happened and how everything turned out. So things are kind of coming around full circle. Well, so what I'm going to do is just kind of give you an overview of what happened over the 3 years. Once we decided to make this commitment and go and spend 3 years in the mission field in Tanzania, whirlwind of activity began. And we had to talk to the elders at Lehman Avenue, see if they would be our overseers and help us with this work. And they agreed to do that. And then you go through the process, the crucible that is trying to raise funds, which many missionaries will tell you that the fundraising is probably the most difficult part of mission work in many regards, anyway. And planning the logistics and all of that sort of thing that has to be done. How you're going to get there, what you're going to do while you're there, what your exit plan is. There are all types of logistics that have to be planned. It's a time filled with apprehension and excitement. And so finally the time comes when we packed everything up, put it on a container to be shipped over there, sold everything else, put just a few things in storage, and prepared to leave behind friends and family and everything familiar. And here we are making our way through the airport for our family. It takes a pretty good bit of luggage. We had 10 suitcases, 5 carry-ons, 5 personal items, a couple of car seats, a stroller. I mean, we were really stretching what the airlines would allow us to do. But that's what you do when you're moving your family to Africa. Matter of fact, we had so much luggage at times. We used it to build a fort in the airport to try to keep the kids corralled and that kind of thing. So there we are. That particular airport is the airport in Istanbul. It wasn't quite a caravan of camels, but it kind of felt like it at times. Then once we get over there, we find a house to be our home for the next 3 years. A little smaller and plainer than what we're used to, but it was perfect for our family. A very serene and simple setting, and just a great time and place to be our home base during those 3 years. When you're on the mission field, you learn very quickly that the typical American way of life that most of us experience, most people we know experience, that those things are it's not the only way to live life. As a matter of fact, it's not even the way most people live life when you're thinking about on a global scale. Even now in 2016, there's still a lot of people that live fairly primitive lifestyles, live in houses like this. And the way we live life is beyond a fantasy to them. And if you've had the opportunity to go on a campaign trip or in some way visit a third world culture, you understand the type of poverty that is there just can't be described in words, done justice with pictures. You have to be immersed in it, surrounded by the sights, the sounds, the smells, all of that go along with it. Sitting at outside a hut like this, you're having on an overturned bucket probably, and that's most likely the chair that you'll be offered, and sitting there having a Bible study with chickens walking around your feet, and a cow a few feet behind you. If there's, he lets himself be known if there's a particular moving point or something like that. But it's just an entirely different experience. And while you're there for a few weeks, a few months, the things that flood your senses are the differences. Because everything, they talk differently, their culture is different, drive on a different side of the road. I mean, just every single thing is different. But then, once you're there for a pretty good while, the similarities are the things that begin to leap out at you. They're just like us in a lot of ways. They had their children on their minds. That's one way to babysit, right? But they do. There are surface differences like that. You probably don't see that happen in your church services very often. But they still are just thinking about their families. They still are just thinking about how they're going to make ends meet. They're thinking about how they're going to make their living. They're thinking about how they're going to pay their rent. They're thinking about what Jesus wants for their lives. They're thinking about God's will for their lives. They're thinking about their health. They're thinking the same stuff we think about and get concerned about is the exact same stuff that they do. And underneath it, the very same motivations that drive us are the things that drive them. And there are good, honest, decent people here. There are good, honest, decent people there. There are some dishonest people here. There are some dishonest people there. Just everything is, and the more you look past those superficial differences, the more what leaps out to you is, man, these people are just like us once you get down under that stuff. And it's good for us to have that appreciation for those similarities so that you can connect with them and appreciate the value of their souls, the importance of their lives, and so on. So we went with this fourfold mission. We told you we wanted to do preacher training. We're going to work with Andrew Connolly School of Preaching. I'll talk to you more about that in just a minute. Preacher training, I think, is essential when it comes to the long-term good that a mission work is going to do in a certain area. Every mission point doesn't have to open up a school of preaching themselves, but the church in a region has to have some plan for training, whether they're going to have a school, send them to a school somewhere else, whatever, but they need a plan to train preachers. Also, personal evangelism, we're going to take part in that. Benevolence, when you're surrounded by the poverty I described earlier, the thing that you want to do is help people. You want to do it because, well, first of all, you want to show that you care, so it opens up windows of opportunity for evangelism. But even more than that, you do care. And just as a loving Christian, when you have the opportunity to relieve suffering, then you want to be able to do that. Now, I'm not going to show you a lot of pictures from the benevolence aspect in this report. I used to. When I first got there, being excited about what we were doing and wanting people back home to feel connected to what was going on and to see the good that they were doing, I took a lot of pictures of benevolence and sent reports about how, we helped this person, we did this, we did that. But it began to not sit quite right with me. And I'm not criticizing anybody else that does that. I'm just talking about me personally. It began to feel sort of like doing your good works to be seen of men. It began to feel a little exploitive, like, here we're going to help you, but we're going to make sure we're going to take pictures of it and make sure that we can tell people all about how we helped you. And that felt a little off to me. So know that part of the funds that you sent to us, some of that was used to provide food and shelter and clothing and educational opportunities to some very impoverished people. But I'm not going to show you a lot of pictures of that tonight. You okay with that? And then also we wanted to be a part of church growth in helping strengthen the congregations in the area in general. So let's start with preacher training. We worked with Andrew Connolly School of Preaching. There's a couple of the classes. And while we were there, we played a role in helping to train more than 40 gospel preachers, East African gospel preachers. And I talked to you before, and I talk to you again now about the amplified good that comes from preacher training. That's why I think this was the one of the most important things we did over there, is because we're there for 3 years. We helped to train 40 gospel preachers. Didn't do it all by ourselves, obviously. There's the school, the staff. I'm not taking credit for all that, but I'm saying we were part of it. So we're there for 3 years, play a part in training more than 40 gospel preachers. Let's give each of them an average career of preaching of about 30 years. Some will preach longer, some not as long. But let's give them 30 years on average. And so seeds were planted in our time there that'll yield 1,200 years worth of preaching and evangelism. How I got there, 40 preachers, 30 years. 1,200 years worth of preaching and evangelism. That's the amplified good that comes from preacher training. That's why I think preacher training is so important when it comes to mission work, because we can come back and feel good about what we've left behind and the good that those men are going to continue to be able to do. And that was one of the things that attracted me to the work to begin with, and part of why I think it's so important. And also thinking about exponential good, generational good. One of our students from the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching said, hey, we need a school of preaching like this in Kenya. And so he goes and helps to establish the Kenya School of Preaching following the same model that we did. And so now you've got all these students being trained in Kenya to be gospel preachers. And so there's another generation of good, another level of good. So that's important. But personal evangelism was, while I think the preacher training is probably the most important part of what we did, personal evangelism was the most rewarding and enriching part. That was my favorite part because it's just so enjoyable to lead somebody from the beginning through understanding God's Word and His will for their lives to the point where they're ready to put on their Lord in baptism and be a part of Christ's church. Baptisms are, Bible studies are so easy to set up there. People are very receptive. And in fact, it's culturally, people are so hospitable that it would feel rude for them to tell you no. You come up to their door and say, hey, would you like to study the Bible? It would be rude for them to say, no, I don't want to study the Bible. And so we can take advantage of that. And so they'll say, yes, sure, come on in. And then you have that time to sit down and study. But evangelism there, Bible studies there, you have some, many of the same issues that you deal with here, but you have some different questions that come up as well. For example, here's some real questions I've had to have serious conversations with people about. One is it okay to drink blood? Is it okay to drink blood? One of the staples of the Messiah diet is a beverage made of milk and blood blended together. I call it a Messiah protein shake. But so we have to have a conversation. Can a Christian drink blood? Is that an issue? We have to have a conversation. Is polygamy okay? Can I keep all my wives? Well, no, you can't. Polygamy is not okay. You can't do that. Well, can I keep the youngest wife then? Real questions. No, we can't do that. You go back and keep the first one. Well, can I correct my wife by hitting her? That's a conversation I've had to have with what should be mature Christian men. Can I correct my wife by hitting her? No, you can't do that. Real follow-up question. What if she brings me cold coffee? That's the different matter altogether, right? We're talking about coffee. No, you still can't hit her if she brings you cold coffee. What about if I'm going to get baptized and I get eaten by a crocodile? Real question came up, had to deal with it. Brother Ralph, you don't get that one here very often, do you? Nobody asks, what if you get eaten by a crocodile? Will you cast a demon out of my mother-in-law? Yeah, so different issues come up. Talking about preacher training, personal evangelism is another aspect of how we train them. And so 2 Saturdays a month, they're involved in going out and participating in personal work at area congregations. In the last 2 months of the most recent quarter, our students helped account for 102 baptisms and 87 restorations. So that's good that's being done right now while they're at school. Imagine the good that's going to be done when they are out on their own doing this, full time and not just a couple of days a month. Our whole family got involved on levels where they could. There's my daughter Abby teaching Bible class. There's my wife Tiffany. She was a great resource of biblical knowledge for the ladies there. She did a lot of ladies' days and taught ladies' classes and so forth. This particular ladies' day was in Maasai territory, and Swahili is the language that is spoken by most people, but the Maasai have their own language, and not all of the Maasai people speak Swahili. So when Tiffany taught out there, she would speak in English, and then this sweet lady named Grace would translate the English into Swahili. And then this lady over there would translate that Swahili into Maasai. So everything had to be translated twice in that setting. She also was a great resource to the children, Vacation Bible Schools, our own children, and so forth. Really, I just wanted an excuse to show you my family because they're a beautiful family. One of the things that we wanted to do is build unity among the area congregations. And so we took every opportunity to get out amongst the different congregations. And so doing seminars, we did marriage seminars, we did spiritual discipline seminars, various types of seminars gave us the chance to go to many, many different congregations. And in addition to helping bring them some maturity, it also helped to bring the churches together. One of the things that I admire most about the churches in the Arusha, Tanzania area is they work together so very, very well in a manner that really American churches could learn from. They get together once a month to all the evangelists from the area congregations get together once a month to talk about how they can best work together to evangelize the city that month. And that's just, I like that model, that idea of working together on the same team, maintaining congregational autonomy, but still working together strategically for the good of the Lord in that particular city and community. During our first year there, we helped to establish the Njiro Chini congregation that met in this storage area for a year and a half of the congregation's life. Just started there in one of our members' houses. The school, using their facilities, plays host to 2 different camps every December. There's the Tanzania Christian Camp, which follows the pattern of most church camps, Bible camps that you have here, but it was a novel idea there. They didn't have a lot like that. And then they also have Future Preacher Training Camp in December, which is more, I don't know if any of you go to Horizons at Fred Hardeman, it's more like that, more geared toward preparing and delivering lessons, serving in church services, and so forth. We also host a lectureship every year called the Tanzania Leadership Conference. That's a big deal for us. People come from 4 or 5 different nations each year to take part in that, and it blesses East Africa in general. Leadership development is a big need in the area, not only in the church, but in society in general over there. Throughout the year, we're blessed to have a number of campaigns that come from America to do work in the local congregations like this. This is the Manyiri congregation. But I want to take a moment to say a word in defense of or in favor of campaign work. And sometimes campaigners, as they're trying to raise their funds to go and do campaign work, meet some opposition where people think maybe it's a glorified vacation, or people question sometimes the good that campaign work does. But I want to offer some thoughts from the perspective of somebody who's been a full-time missionary and has hosted numerous campaigners and campaigns over the last few years. And here are some thoughts I have about the good that campaigns do. One is some of the campaigners are going to experience spiritual growth. If you've never been outside the country, then going and experiencing a campaign in a third world country is going to enrich that person's life in significant ways. It's not going to leave you untouched. It's not going to leave you unchanged. And secondly, some of those campaigners are going to experience a broadened perspective of the worldwide church. One problem that a lot of American Christians experience is kind of this vision of the church as being the American church and then the international church, like it's two different things. But the church goes beyond the boundaries of America, and it's not two different churches. It's one church. How many churches did Christ establish? One. That's right. How many churches did He purchase with His blood? One. And so when we think about our brethren in Tanzania or other parts of Africa or in China or in India or Australia or wherever, it's all part of the same body of Christ. And it's good to have not just a conceptual sense of that, but a tangible, real sense of the worldwide body of church, of Christ. And so when you go and you experience these things on a campaign, it helps to increase that. Also, some campaigners, when they come back home, become more evangelistic, because when you go on a campaign, it's easy to be evangelistic. You're expected to be, right? That's why you came. It's what you do. And so you walk up to people and you ask them about the Bible, and you give them tracts, and you ask them to study, and you bring up Christ all the time because it's what you're expected to do. It's easy to do what you're expected to do. And then some people will find that wasn't as hard as I thought that it would be. And so they come back home, and it's a little bit easier because then they have some experience. They've led some Bible studies. They've practiced bringing up the subject of Christ. And I know of several congregations whose local evangelism has been greatly rejuvenated because they had leaders that went and participated on campaigns. And they came back on fire for evangelism, and the local congregations really benefited from that. Also, some of your campaigners are going to become supporters and advocates of mission work. They've seen it firsthand. They have an understanding of the worldwide body of Christ. They understand the importance of mission work and evangelism because they've witnessed it firsthand. And so those are going to be people that come back and help to remind elderships and help to remind churches. And we need to make sure that missions are a part of our budget. Missions are important. Let's not forget about the missionaries. There are going to be people that are praying for the missionaries and so forth. Also, some campaigners, certainly not all, but some become full-time missionaries. I don't know very many missionaries at all, maybe not any. I have to give the caveat that not many in case somebody does, and I just hadn't had the conversation with them to know about it. But I don't know of any missionaries, full-time missionaries, that didn't go on a campaign somewhere before they became full-time missionaries. Maybe they didn't go to the field where they wound up, but they took part in a campaign somewhere. And that lit a fire in them, planted a seed in them, and that eventually led them to be missionaries. And so in my estimation, we would have a great deal fewer full-time missionaries if we didn't have campaigns, because one eventually leads to the other. Also, excitement is stirred up among the local population where you go. They feel connected to the worldwide body because these American Christians care enough to come and interact with them and spend time with them, and it creates contacts for them. It creates excitement and rejuvenation for them, and that's good. It helps the missionaries to feel remembered, because mission work can be kind of an isolated, lonely thing at times. And when the campaigners come over and they are thoughtful of the missionaries, then it's a wonderful thing. And so, if you're taking part in a campaign, planning a campaign, I want to encourage you to think, as part of your campaign planning, how to encourage the missionaries as you're going about. For example, usually when you travel internationally, the airlines allow you 2 bags. Well, contact your local missionary beforehand and tell them, hey, I'm going to pack my stuff in 1 bag. I got a 2nd bag, it's yours. If there's something from America that you would like sent, here's my address, send it to my... Amazon doesn't deliver to Tanzania. They don't. But sometimes we would have campaigners, they'd say, if you need anything, let us know, we'll bring it. They'd give us their address. We could buy our own stuff and have it sent to them, and then they could bring it to us. The delivery is the big issue. And so doing little things like that. Every once in a while you'd have a campaigner that would come over and brag about how light they like to travel. And they're like, yeah, we came over here with just my carry-on. I didn't even bring any checked baggage. And we're like, you had 2 bags. You could have brought some stuff. There's stuff we could have used from America. But anyway, so think about that. As we move on into our second year, there's a great deal of transition. When we went over there, we joined a team of 4 families. And eventually, through attrition, one family, their commitment was up. There were health issues in other families. And before you knew it, as far as being on the ground there, it was just my family. And even for several months, because of a health issue in my family, it was just me there in Africa alone holding this fort down. That wasn't exactly what we thought we were signing up for. We thought we were going to play a role in a big team, and here we're holding a big fort down all by ourselves. Seemingly, it felt like that. We weren't really. We had some good local workers with us and so forth. But that also brought about some necessities in changing roles. And so I was asked to take over directing the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching, which I did. And one of my big goals in directing the school was I was training 2 local men, Charles and Ahimadiwe. I bet I know which name you'll remember out of those. Charles and Ahimadiwe to take over as co-directors after I was finished with that role. And we did that. And so now we have this school that Americans planted it and built it and that kind of thing, but now it's being run by African men. And I think that's a big step, and that's something we're proud of, the work taking that step forward. Eventually, reinforcements arrived in the form of new teammates, Justin and Anna Maynard. Matter of fact, Justin Maynard is here with us tonight. Justin, stand up so everybody can see. There's Justin back there. I encourage you to stop by and get to know him and talk to him. He's got, on the table back here, he's got some little nice brochures that tell you a little bit about his work. Pick one of those up because what they're doing, I'll get to what they're doing in just a minute. But for now, they jumped in admirably and proved themselves to be hard workers and great additions to the team. Then tragedy struck. Our team leader, Cy Stafford, was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer that, we thought we lost him. Matter of fact, we did lose him, and he was resuscitated. About a week later, 2 weeks later maybe, they called the family in and said, he's not going to make it out of today. And so people were calling from Africa and all kinds of things, saying goodbyes, and it was a long, long day. That was in December, and he's still with us. So despite what the doctors thought, God was not done with him on this earth, and we're very thankful for that. But this did bring to light some challenges in the work, because the work was very dependent on SCI. And one of those challenges is in funding. SCI is a tremendous fundraiser, and whenever he's no longer able to do that, what's going to happen with the funding of the school? Because it is a large mission point, it does take some money to operate. And so that's where the Maynards are coming in. They're helping to develop the farm side of the school. And there's crops that are being raised there. Now there's raising chickens and cows. Soon they're going to be adding pigs and building up the farm aspect of the school. And that does two things for us. One is it provides some vocational training for the preachers, because most of them are not going to receive outside support when they graduate. And so they're going to need a way to support themselves while they are evangelizing. And so working with the farm gives them a way to learn some of those skills. But secondly, it enables the school to provide its own food in feeding students and staff, and the surplus from that is able to be sold and provide some funding for the school. And so the more the school can be self-sustaining, the less outside funds have to be raised for regular operations of the school. And I think it's entirely feasible that the regular budget of the school could get to the point where the farm is supporting that, and then the school would only need special contributions periodically for special needs and things like that. But anyway, so moving, part of what I did was help to help the school to have local leadership. Part of what Justin's doing is helping the school to be more locally funded. And that's an important important aspect in the continued stability of the work. They also brought in these children's seminars and invited us to be a part of that. That took us to some of the more remote locations, and we enjoyed that. His wife and my wife would teach the children and the women. Meanwhile, he and I would go outside, usually in some scenic locations, and have Bible studies. This usually resulted in several baptisms throughout those days. Those days quickly became our favorite days of the month. The Giro congregation continued to grow and was able to move from the storage area into an independent location with a tent. Not a building yet, but a tent, but that led to some in-tent worship. There's your children's Bible class out here. That was kind of slow, wasn't it? Say worshiping in a tent. And then the adult Bible class. At a recent campaign, there was overflow seating only. People had to sit outside the tent. And so that was an encouraging thing to see that church growing. Let me tell you about this. I know my time's evaporating so quickly. But this was something really cool that happened toward the end of our time there. We had the opportunity to study with a local denominational preacher. And he came to understand that some things he had been taught and was himself teaching were just wrong. They were not in line with what the Bible taught. And he understood that what we were teaching was correct. He himself was still counting the cost, because for him to make this change, he's giving up his livelihood. It was a difficult change for him to make, and so at that time he was not ready to do that. But knowing that we were teaching the truth, he wanted the members of his church to be exposed to the truth. And so he invited us to conduct a seminar at his congregation. And so we load up and go to this denominational church. We spend several hours with him one day teaching and preaching the gospel. And there's follow-up Bible studies and so forth. But as a result, about a fifth of that congregation was baptized and came to Christ, including one of their elders. And so it's just a testament, I think, to the power of the gospel when it reaches the hearts of people that sincerely want to serve God, that sincerely want to obey God, and are willing to take action when they see the truth. And so that's an ongoing situation. I hope that there'll be many more conversions that come as a part of that as well. Through it all, many prayers have been answered. And here's something I want to stop and encourage you about. This church was very good at supporting us. Some members individually were good in supporting us generously, and we appreciate that so much. And what we also appreciate is prayers. If you're not a person who is able to support financially, if you're not a person who is able to go physically to the mission field, that is no excuse not to be involved in missions. I think the church ought to have a 100% involvement rate in missions, and not a percentage less. And here's how everybody can be involved in missions, and that is through prayer. Prayer matters. It's real. It's not doing nothing. It's not a last-ditch effort. So many times people treat prayer like we can't do anything else, so we'll pray. Well, that's not what our attitude should be towards prayer. Even in football terminology, when you're desperate and no normal play is going to work, what does the team do? They throw up a Hail Mary. They throw up a prayer, is what's being indicated by that terminology, meaning they can't do it themselves. There's not a good chance, so all they can do is pray. Don't look at prayer that way. Prayer ought to be our first resort. Praying is doing something, and it matters. Please make missions a part of your regular prayer life. Get a list of the missionaries that your congregation supports and pray for them by name. Pray for the works, the mission points, and help bless your missionaries in that way. And it's important. Be involved in missions in that way, other ways if you can, especially in prayer. And if you're involved in other ways, that's no excuse not to pray as well. Pray also. Now, even though everything didn't necessarily go exactly like we thought it would, still, looking back, preachers were trained, more than 40 of them. A great deal of personal evangelism was conducted. Benevolence took place. A lot of people were helped in a lot of different ways. And the church experienced strengthening, unification, and growth in the area. And so I feel good about saying that it was a successful mission. And thank you so much for helping us make that a possibility and being teammates in that. So what now? I'll continue to go back every year to lead campaigns or to teach short courses. So if you're interested in joining me on a campaign at some point in time, that would be wonderful. Come along with me, and we'll go back to Tanzania if you want. And in fact, this is what will happen with any donations that continue to come to Lehman Avenue on behalf of Tanzania Missions. Will go toward these future campaigns or a couple of ongoing benevolence projects that we're still involved in. Also, the Maynard family and the Storks families will continue carrying the work forward. And so another thing that you can do, if you appreciate the work that's taking place and would like to see it going strongly forward, is I encourage you to consider supporting Justin. He's back here. Take him aside, talk to him, and what they're doing is important about the future of this work. And we're heavily invested in getting it to this point, and we'd like to see it continue on very well. The Lehman Avenue elders believe in him as well, and they're supporting the Maynards very generously themselves. And so I would plant that bug in your ear for your consideration also. Now, what I'd like to do now is to ask you about your own journey. What is it, how is God working in your life, and in what ways are you serving Him? It You don't have to go on a foreign campaign. You don't have to go and move your family to Africa, but you still have a missionary journey that you're in the midst of, or at least you should be. In what way are you reflecting the gospel to those around you, within your sphere of influence? And maybe there's somebody that has influenced you for Christ, and there are some changes that you need to make based on what you understand from that influence, and you're ready to come and dedicate your life to Christ. You're ready to come and repent of sin that you've allowed to remain in your life. Maybe you're ready to come and based on your study, you understand the need to be baptized. Now is a good time for that as well. Or maybe you just want to come and ask for prayers from your brethren. That's certainly appropriate. So if you'd like to respond, the invitation is yours. Come forward and let your need be known. While together we stand and sing.